Today I'm going to be explaining and showing off my skeleton mage build that I've built out for bossing specifically, although with the change of a single gem, it can go from bossing to mapping quite easily. This is kind of a homebrew. I was looking at Aegis melding skeleton mage builds and none of them quite felt right for me for what I was trying to do because I wanted a Uber Elder and other Uber boss fights like Uber Sirus and Uber Maven. And the problem is with most bosser builds, they either lack the defenses to get through immune phases, or yeah, I guess that's really the only problem. So I went ahead and made a build that's near impossible to brick an Uber boss fight. You would have to be playing either unoptimally or standing in place to basically lose against an Uber fight. So going over the skill tree here, it's a very simple skill tree. I mean, we're just going into minions. We're taking Dead Reckoning, and then we're trying to take as many reservation efficiency nodes as possible because we're going to be stacking auras. And then we're taking some important shield and energy shield masteries as well, such as the increases and reductions to armor applied to energy shield recharge rate. We're taking Fizz taken as chaos damage because this is a chaos inoculation build. And then we're taking large cluster jewels with minion damage, as well as minions have increased attack and cast speed and max energy shield. And then one of them has int, so that we can stack the energy shield multiplier. And then one of them has dexterity to fill out requirements, although these you might have to play around with based on how your build looks at the end. But yeah, basically these are to fill out requirements and then get you some added offense and defense. And then for our medium clusters, we're running one Blessed Rebirth and Renewal medium so that our skeletons, when they spawn, have 2 seconds where they can't die, which is very effective against bossing. And then we're taking Feasting Fiends and Renewal on all the others because Renewal gives you double damage, and then Feasting Fiends gives you life leech and increased damage and increased life. So it's kind of just like a general all-around good second passive when we already have Blessed Rebirth in one of them, because we don't need to stack Blessed Rebirth. And then we're running 2 reservation clusters with more attribute fillers and a little bit of elemental resistance, although it's really not needed. And then we have Uncompromising and Righteous Path on those 2. So one has Uncompromising, one has Righteous Path, and this helps with our reservations once again, as well as gives us a little bit of added effect to those 2 auras. For our other jewels in the mediums, we have Melting of the Flesh, which is going to help us turn Purity of Ice into an all max res, as well as making Aegis Aurora an all max res increase. So this build can get up to 86% max res, and you could even push it to 88% if you put max res on your gloves, and you can also get it up to 92% if you get max cold res on your shield crucible tree. So you can I think it I think 90% is the hard cap. Like you can't max res over 90%, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, I've never pushed it above 90, so I wouldn't know. But 86 feels very comfortable. Trust me, we don't really need more than that. We'd rather focus on offense. Since nobody at all seems to be valing Dead Reckoning jewels, there are none for Corrupted Blood immunity, which means if you're going to get Corrupted Blood immunity on this build, you're either going to have to val your own Dead Reckonings, or you're going to have to take a Ghastly Eye jewel with Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted. Mine has a little extra strength to cover out strength requirements, and then has a splash of minions deal mixed elemental damage. This build prioritizes stacking cold minion damage. So yeah, we're focusing to put at least 1 cold modifier on that Ghastly Eye jewel. Obviously, if you can get a better jewel, that's great, but they're hard to find, so that's just what I managed to find. And then don't forget, we're taking an Impossible Escape, so we're getting the +2 all res and +1 max cold down by Prismatic Skin around the Unwavering Stance node. this is helping a ton with our max res, kind of just increasing that a little bit more. And that's kind of generally the tree. Otherwise, we're just taking minion nodes. Moving on to skills, what we're running is we're running on the gloves, we're running generosity with hatred and zealotry. So these are our damage auras, and we're generositying them so that we can increase the effect of these auras on our skeletons. And then we're putting Flame Dash here because it's the best place to put it. In our shield, we are putting Sniper's Mark, Enhance, level 4, and Tempest Shield. Currently, I'm still leveling up my Tempest Shield, so it's at level 19, but it should be level 20. Of course, if you can get to level 21, even better, but those are expensive. Sniper's Mark we are using to hard cast. We can't use Mark on hit, so we're using it to hard cast on bosses, and it does wonders to our damage output against bosses. So be sure to cast your Sniper's Mark on bosses as often as you can. In our weapon, or main hand, we're running Bone Offering, Enduring Cry, and Desecrate. I'm still leveling up those jewels as well, but again, for the time being, it's doing uber content just fine. So the way this works is Enduring Cry doesn't get triggered, it's a hard cast, but the Desecrate and Bone Offering does trigger on the wand, because the wand has a trigger. I'll get into that, but yeah, we're running Bone Offering, Desecrate as a way to give our minions a ton of block, and then Enduring Cry to give our minions endurance charges and added health regen, but also to give ourselves endurance charges at times of strife, I guess, in boss fights. It can be good to have Enduring Cry be up for a little extra fizz mitigation. And then in our helmet, we are running Discipline, Purity of Ice, Determination, and Enlighten. Enlighten 4 is very important in this build. You're not going to be able to pull off Enlighten 3, I don't think. And it's Divergent Purity of Ice, but it honestly shouldn't be, because we're running Fleshcrafter. Cold Penetration doesn't do anything, so it should probably be just default Purity of Ice. So that'll be a lot cheaper. And I'm running these 20%, the auras 20%, so that I have increased AoE. It's important when you're running minion builds to have increased AoE on your auras. In my boots, I'm running my Summon Stone Golem with Animate Guardian, Raise Zombie, and Meat Shield. So these are just kind of our added defensive minion skills. On the Animate Guardian, we're running Kingmaker with that one Tyrant's helmet that I can't remember the name of. The Ephemeral Garb, a pair of rare boots with Brittle, and then Southbound for gloves. So really just, in the Tyrant Helm, we're running a green slot to stack cold damage. So yeah, general, basically we're just have Animate Guardian for the Culling Strike, and then everything else about him is to keep him alive. Brittle Ground adds crit chance, even though, yeah, honestly, I'm not sure if Brittle Ground was the best option for my Animate Guardian in this build. Someone who's better at minions would probably know the answer to that. And then we're running, obviously, the Stone Golem and Raised Zombies are just added defensive and distraction tools. For our main 6-link, we are running Val Summon Skeletons with Empower 4, Awaken Elemental Focus, Awaken Spell Echo, Awaken Minion Damage, and Awaken Control Destruction. So you might be saying, like, there's no greater multiple projectiles, there's no volley, there's no pierce, etc., etc. That's correct. This build is not made for mapping, but if you want to do mapping, you can swap Control Destruction, or actually Elemental Focus. You want to keep Control Destruction, actually deals more damage than Elemental Focus. So you swap out Elemental Focus for greater multiple projectiles. I suggest taking a level 20 Anomalous multiple projectiles instead of going for Awakened GMP, because the price difference is like very different, and for not much of a difference in added value when you're playing Summon Skeletons, especially if you're just using it for clear. The GMP really doesn't have to be awakened. And then we have Bone Armor, obviously, from our Ascendancy, and Commandment of Light is just a lab enchant, probably not the best one. So moving on to our gear. For our gear, we have a Minion Wand, which I bought this one off the market, even though a friend of mine did tell me how to craft it. I didn't want to. These are kind of tough wands to craft because it requires fossiling and then an ashling and yada yada yada. So I bought this and then I added increased area of effect enchantment onto it because there's no reason to add fizz damage to the convoking wand. And then the crucible tree just has nothing yet. I still have to work on that part. Aegis Aurora, we have added chance to block, which helps with cap our spell block chance, or at least come close to capping it, and just kind of closer to capping our chance to block. And then Fizz as Lightning. Now, the perfect corrupt would be Fizz as Chaos, but there were none, so I took Fizz as Lightning, but really just any Fizz as Element will do here. And then just try to get high armor and evasion rolls. The increased elemental damage with attack skills is irrelevant. You don't need to worry about it. So the rolls you're mainly looking for are how good the base armor and energy shield is, and then 2 good implicits. Alternatively, you can go into crucible trees instead if you think you can find a better crucible tree, but it might get more expensive. So yeah, keep that in mind. The helmet, since we're not running raised specters in this build, we don't need a elder shaper influenced helmet. Instead, we can do fractured level of all minions, and that will help us kind of fill out our reservations as well. So we can stack extra auras because we're not running specters using our helmet's implicits. So this is kind of what I did here. And we're just using an energy shield base, although I think armor energy shield hybrid is the best base. They're just a lot more expensive, so just find a decently cheap base, and then for suffixes just get a resistance roll for whatever you're low in, and then intelligence. And then you want max raise zombies and skeletons on the unveil. Best unveil you would want is actually +2 to socketed AoE, and then craft on max zombies and skeletons. I missed, so I just put raise zombies and skeletons on it and then crafted on AoE. But yeah, those should definitely be switched around as the best in slot. Fleshcrafter, necromancer, silks. So this is helping our skeleton mages deal tons and tons of damage because we're ignoring elemental resistances. Mine has +2 to level of socketed minion and +1 to level of socketed. I very much suggest getting a +2 to socketed minion because not only does it increase foul summon skeletons, but it's also increasing awakened minion damage. The +1 to all might make the fleshcrafter very expensive. I got really lucky. This one only costed me 60 divines, but typically they're like upwards of 100. So I would suggest just getting a +2 to minion, and then something relevant as the second mod, or even if it's not relevant, just +2 to socketed minion. I think it's like a 10 div bottom line for those. For our gloves, we're just running minion and chance to suppress spell damage as the implicits. That's because there wasn't really a better implicit than suppress damage. And then res rolls, minion damage, AoE, int, energy shield. We're really just putting more AoE, more energy shield, minion deals increased damage. It's a very simple craft. Because of the way we're running a mage blood, our resistances, we really don't need to focus in overcapping too hard. So just any fire cold res roll or any mix of resistance roll down there, as long as it's not chaos, obviously, will work. And then you're rolling on essence for minion increased damage on a fractured base of tier 1 flat max energy shield, or you could do % increased. I don't actually know which one's better if you're not getting the other one. And then you're getting +1 to AoE for I think the gloves have the zealotry mix. Yeah, the generosity mix, so important to get the extra level out of that as well. For the boots, same thing. We're just getting movement speed with minions increased life, int, max energy shield, % increased craft, energy shield, and then a resistance of some kind. For the implicits, we're doing rate of travel skills and bone offering, increased effect. This will help us with dodging in boss fights, and then we have bone offering, which is just a great defensive tool. Amulet, we're running the Ashes of the Stars Onyx Amulet. with as good of rolls as possible without spending a stupid amount of currency. So I went for a 20 and 29. A guy sold it to me for 38 divines, which wasn't bad compared to the 55 divine rate for a perfect roll. Yeah, although I think 20% reservation efficiency necessary, uh, but then you could probably get away with like a 20% quality, you know, and the quality is a lot less important than the reservation. For our bone rings, we're really just putting int on our bone rings. I am now looking at these bone rings and realizing I have not put intrinsic catalysts on one of them. Um, I will get around to doing that. We're just doing minion increased damage, minion increased attack and cast speed, non-channeling skills, cost reduction, max energy shield of any kind if you can get it, and then we have int and then an open suffix. Um, that suffix can be anything. Obviously, I think best is like minion elemental resistances, but yeah, it's hard to craft these. So if you get a dead suffix there, don't get too angry. It'll probably happen. And then for the belt, we're running a Mage Blood 4 flask with Sapphire, Ruby, and Topaz flasks. The cool thing about these 3 flasks is not only do they provide a tremendous amount of elemental resistances, but they also provide 20% resistance mitigation in each of their respective color. And then we're running a Granite Flask with a Rainbow for even more resistances. You might be able to get away with not running additional elemental resistances on Granite Flask, instead running like Curse Reduction or Stun Immunity, whichever one is fuels your fancy there. And then we also are taking reduced mana cost of skills on one of them, increased armor on the other, and chance to avoid ignite. So this build gets freeze immunity from Pantheon, as well as some decent stun and block recovery from the Pantheon. It gets shock immunity from Tempest Shield, but it's missing ignite immunity, which is actually relevant when you're fighting Uber Sirus. So we've gone ahead and put chance to avoid ignite in the flask to get 100% avoidance. Since we can't run a Storm Shroud, we're too tight on gem slots, and even if we did run a Storm Shroud, I'm pretty sure shock immunity doesn't count, so it would be sort of redundant to get that. It would open up a Pantheon potentially, even though the stun recovery is still important on the Pantheon. So I do think chance to avoid ignite here is fine. Obviously, you can corrupt your rings and try to get immune to ignite that way, but yeah, this just seemed like an easy solution to me. And that's kind of the gear and the build, really. The DPS right now that it's putting out against Guardian Pinnacle bosses, I've calculated to be about 38 million damage per second. And against Uber Pinnacle bosses, it was about 16 million damage per second. So that number might sound kind of low, but trust me, I've ran a lot of these bosses now. It's a good amount of damage. It does the job. I'd say Uber Sirus is the hardest one that I'm facing. I really hate that guy. But Maven and Uber Elder are pieces of cake with this build. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed checking out this build. It's very cool. My next video coming out will probably be a 125-ish Uber Elder fragment run to see if it's worth it, see if it's profitable. So yeah, hope you guys want to see that, because that's coming out. I've been grinding for it. All right. With that being said, guys, subscribe if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. All right. See you later.